In April 1945, Hitler orders the deaths of 62 scientists working on the Bell Project. Concentration camp prisoners working on the secret underground projects are also executed. These mass killings are overseen by the SS general in charge of Hitler's secret weapons projects, Dr. Hans Kammler.
The entrances to the tunnels were blown up, and all the prisoners of the concentration camps, which knew anything about the production or the purpose, was closed inside, and so the mystery of this undertaking was sealed off effectively.
Hitler trusts Kammler to wipe out any traces of the Nazis' secret projects. But what the Fuhrer doesn't know is that Kammler is getting ready to turn sides. In 1981, Hitler's former Minister of Armaments and War, Albert Speer, confessed that Kammler had told him he was planning to take all his secrets to the Americans in return for immunity. Did Kammler change sides? In April 1945, the man who had access to the Horten flying wing, who'd overseen von Ohein's jet revolution, von Braun's ballistic missiles, Schauberger's saucer, and the mysterious Bell, leaves his base in Pilsen and vanishes forever.
We actually don't know what happened to Hans Kammler at the end of the war. He has just disappeared. No body has been found.
6 different reports of his death were recorded. At the Nuremberg trials, he was barely mentioned, even though he had been directly responsible for the destruction of the Warsaw Ghetto and designing ovens at Auschwitz. Other SS officers that were dead or missing were tried in their absence. Why not Kammler? Was it an oversight by the Allies, or did Kammler make good on his plan to hand over his secrets to the United States?
Kammler would have been a trump card, for example, for the Russians or for the Americans as such an expert.
If he did go to America, he joined a roll call of Germany's most brilliant minds. Under a secret program called Operation Paperclip, the U.S. military swept up and transported Nazi engineers and scientists back to the States.
The American public knew about a few of the paperclip Nazis. Werner von Braun was the poster child for the program. Most people who had heard of Project Paperclip or bringing the Nazi scientists to the U.S. Figured it was only a few hundred of them.
Declassified documents held at the National Archives indicate the actual number of scientists was in the thousands. Von Ohein, Germany's jet pioneer, went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Alexander Lippisch, an expert in vertical takeoff, went to White Sands, New Mexico. With them came prototypes, like the Horten brothers' flying wing, and a mountain of documents. By 1946, Nazi Germany had been stripped bare. 1 year later, with Nazi scientists settled all over America, the first wave of UFO sightings begins.
Do you think that looks about like what it was, Jay? About what we saw right there.
Is it a coincidence? Or does a closer investigation of the most famous UFO sighting at Roswell, New Mexico, reveal a new and very dark secret? June 1947. Kenneth Arnold, a 42-year-old pilot, makes the first widely reported UFO sighting in the United States. Flying over Washington State, he sees a formation of crescent-shaped craft displaying unusual flight characteristics. Dr. Bruce Maccabee is an optical physicist who has investigated the Arnold case.
There were no wings. He could see no wings, no engines, no vertical stabilizers or anything that was normal, but he assumed it was some sort of a new aircraft.
Arnold's description of their movement results in the first use of the term flying saucer. Just 2 weeks later, America experiences the most famous UFO event of all time. July 1947, an object crashes near Roswell Army Airfield in New Mexico. After investigating the crash site, the Air Force puts out a sensational press release.
The Roswell Army Air Base issued a press release saying that they had a flying saucer that had crashed in the desert.
Just a few hours after the initial press release, the Air Force did a 180, telling the press that the crashed object was a weather balloon, an innocent mistake, or deliberate misinformation.
From the beginning, they had something they did not want the public to know.
If they weren't hiding a crashed alien spacecraft at Roswell, what were they hiding? Does further investigation reveal a link to captured Nazi technology?
For me, the most compelling link between the Roswell event and the Nazis is the shape of the aircraft. The aircraft apparently was a flying wing, and it's well established the Nazis were working on a flying wing.
The Roswell crash happened within flying distance of White Sands, the Air Force base where the Horton brothers' Nazi flying wing was first taken. Roswell was just 2 weeks after Kenneth Arnold had seen the world's first widely reported UFO. Is this what the Air Force was trying to cover up? An American-built flying wing prototype based on Nazi technology. After Roswell, UFO sightings go through the roof, peaking in the 50s.
They're seeing flying saucers everywhere. Flocks of fantastic discs flying through the air. Is there something to it?
There were tens of thousands of sightings. It's well documented now that there was virtually some sort of air war over America in 1952.
The public is convinced that an alien invasion has begun. Even President Truman gets in on the act.
There's always things like that going on. Flying saucers, you know.
By the late 50s, popular culture is reinforcing the message. UFOs mean aliens. Flying saucers are from outer space. In 1952, the U.S. Air Force establishes Project Blue Book, an official task force based at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Project Blue Book collects and evaluates UFO reports. An analysis of these eyewitness sightings shows that Roswell wasn't the only UFO incident happening close to America's most secret bases.
There were large numbers of sightings around hotspots. Hotspots as super secret, super sensitive military bases, often bases where German scientists had been moved to after the war as paperclip.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was one of these hotspots. Initial newspaper reports claimed this is where the Roswell wreckage was taken. Project Blue Book had its headquarters here. In 1965, the Kecksburg object was reportedly seen inside one of its hangars. And it was home to some of Nazi Germany's most brilliant scientists. Dr. Paul Ziss is a retired aeronautical engineer. He worked with German Project Paperclip scientists at Wright-Patterson in the late 1950s.
I worked with about 7 of them. There were probably about 40 of them at Wright-Patterson. First of all, they were loyal Germans, and they wanted Germany to win, and I don't find anything wrong with that. And they became loyal Americans when they came over here.
Loyal enough to keep quiet about Germany's most secret weapons programs? What did the Project Paperclip scientists know about radical gravity theories and flying saucers? Paul Ziss's boss, Dr. Wilhelm Nachstedt, knew something.
Doc would say there were some guys who had some wild ideas about levitating things, but he was not really interested in it.
But the U.S. military was. In the late 1950s, top secret testing began at Wright-Patterson on a disc-shaped or lenticular aircraft.
They may have found something in Germany that had a lenticular shape that they were trying to reproduce.
The U.S. Air Force's first acknowledged flying saucer program is about to take off. Through the 1950s, UFO reports increase across the United States. Were these UFOs alien vehicles from another planet? Or is there a human explanation? Government documents declassified in 1995 show that in the 1950s, the U.S. Air Force invested $5 million in a top-secret program known as Project Silverbug, run out of the Avro Canadian Company in Toronto. The project centered on a radical new craft, the Avro car. Bill Zook is a Canadian aviation historian.
The Avro car was a proof of concept vehicle. It was intended to show the way that a design of a complete flying disc would work.
Declassified Silverbug documents project a top speed of Mach 3 and a maximum ceiling of 80,000 feet. It would take off vertically using the Coanda effect. In the 1930s, Henry Coanda showed that a flow of air around a curved surface will follow the contour to create lift. The Avro car would achieve the Coanda effect by using 3 engines to power a central fan. The downdraft would follow the curved surface and launch the craft into the sky. British engineering genius John Frost was the brains behind the project. Frost openly admitted that his inspiration had come directly from World War II German research.
In 1953, he sat through a debriefing session with a German engineer who'd claimed that there was some testing of a flying disc in a test facility outside of Prague in the Second World War.
This confirmation of German saucer tests wasn't the only link between the Avro car and Nazi Germany. One of the key advisors to the project was Alexander Lippisch, a project paperclip engineer. During World War II, he had worked alongside other Nazi scientists on vertical takeoff.
What John Frost was doing was basically mining some of the information that Lippisch could provide.
Frost was leaning heavily on German know-how. What did he know about their designs that convinced him the Avro car would work? Could it have anything to do with a top-secret Nazi project called the Repulsine? Built by Austrian engineer Victor Schauberger, it bears more than a passing resemblance to Frost's Avro car. Jörg Schauberger is Victor Schauberger's grandson. He owns an original unpowered model of the Repulsine device.
And here is the device Victor Schauberger is very well known for when it comes to suction, anti-gravity, levitation, energy. It's the so-called Repulsine.
Schauberger conducts his work at the Mauthausen concentration camp. Like the Avro car, Schauberger's Repulsine operates on the Coanda effect. According to Jörg Schauberger, his grandfather's initial tests astonished the whole team.
By accident, this device flew to the ceiling of the workshop. Victor thought there is some levitational force within the machine. And this is anti-gravity working.
But in 1944, just as Schauberger and his team are making progress, the SS orders him to head east.
He writes one day he has to go to a secret facility somewhere in Poland, and then we don't have any reports from him for many weeks.
Poland, home of the Bell, another Nazi project focused on vortices and anti-gravity. Was Schauberger brought in to help their design team? At the war's end, Schauberger's designs and prototypes are seized by the Allies.
Victor said after the war that the US have things stolen from him that were very important for his work.
All the working models of the Repulsine vanish. A few years later, as the first flying saucer reports flood the United States, Victor Schauberger is stunned.